is the only show on news television that puts the spotlight on development issues. You're with the India Development Debate on ET Now. I'm Sandeep Gurumurthy, joining you live from our news center in New Delhi. Fugitives, beware. The big brother is watching. Faced with back-to-back bank scams and financial frauds, the government today cleared a bill that empowers the center to attach and liquidate all assets of willful defaulters and frauds like Vijay Mallya and Nirav Modi, who flee the country after defrauding the system. The new law, the Fugitive Economic Offenders Bill, will apply on defaulters of bank loans worth over 100 crore rupees and those who have escaped from the country. Announcing the government's decision after a cabinet meeting, the finance minister explained that the new law will come into force the moment a warrant is issued and the court is convinced that the man is not submitting to the judicial process. The government has also tightened the noose around fraudulent auditors, proposing to bring in a new regulatory authority called the NFRA, or the National Financial Reporting Authority, which will recommend, enforce and monitor compliance of accounting and auditing standards. Remember, as of today, auditors are governed by ICAI, which is a self-regulatory body for chartered accountants. The twin moves, which are expected to curb corrupt practices in financial markets, that's the topic of discussion tonight on the India Development Debate. Joining us on the show this evening, Professor Arun Kumar, Center for Economic Studies and Planning, School of Social Sciences, the JNU, Amarjeet Chopra, former president of the ICAI, Swaminathan Iyer, consulting editor of ET Now, and also joining us are two political representatives, Sanjay Jha, representing the Congress Party, and Narendra Taneja of the BJP. Swami, let me start off with you. What do you make of what is being called a crackdown on corruption? Is this damage control meant largely for optics, or do you believe these are bold moves taken by the government? How are you reading the steps taken by the government today?
Well, I would say first and foremost, there is this public outrage, there is this public outcry. Although it seems the government says we have to be able to do something about this one scamster after another who seems to be able to defraud a large amount and then run off abroad. And then we are left with the opposition party saying, how did you allow these guys to escape? So I would say fundamentally there is a huge political issue out here. The huge political issue is that Mr. Narendra Modi has carefully cultivated this image that I am the guy who cracks down on the bad guys. I am the guy who catches the crooks. I am the guy who will give you better governance. But as against that, if you actually have seen what happened, first Lalit Modi going, Nirav Modi going, Vijay Mallya going, there is a huge embarrassment to the Modi government and to the image of Mr. Narendra Modi himself, which is so critical for the political success of the party. So they had to do something. Now, then the next question is, whatever they had to do, first, is it useful? Secondly, will it actually achieve very much results?
Okay, Professor Arun Kumar, they had to do something. So what they have done, first, is it useful? And secondly, will it achieve any of the objectives? Your view?
So, these kind of steps are definitely useful because it will put some kind of scare in the minds of people who are defrauding the government and the public. So in that sense, there is a degree of usefulness. But the question is implementability. The question is whether it would achieve the results. Now, we've seen that since the government has come, the government has taken a very large number of steps, whether it's the foreign money bill, whether it's the income declaration schemes, whether it is the demonetization, whether it is, other steps like setting up the SIT, etc. So it's not that the government has not been doing anything on this, but the question is what has been achieved in most of these. For instance, in the income declaration scheme, very little money came out as compared to the total size of the black economy. With regard to the foreign money bill also, very little money came back, etc. So we have to see the modus operandi that is used by the people who generate large sums of black money. What is done is there is a process of layering by which the money goes abroad and then it's round trip back. And that's where the government is not able to crack down. The SIT has been looking at the HSBC case and the various other cases where the data was stolen from the banks, but not much has come out of that. So in a sense, while these steps are required so that people have some kind of fear that if they run away, their assets could be seized, or that the auditors who sometimes are in league with the businessmen, they would be worried that, they would get caught in the process. So these steps are needed, but the question is, as Swami correctly said, how effective would they be and whether they'd be useful in the long run?
Let me get in a quick word from Mr. Amarjit Chopra as well, former ICAI president, and I have a lot of specific questions for him on the NFRA. But before I go there, your opening comments on the steps taken by the government. The NFRA is long overdue. It was talked about in the Companies Act, so it's been pending for 5 years now, and finally the cabinet has approved the constitution of the NFRA. What's your own view? Will the ICAI now take it in the right spirit and sort of encourage the setting up of this body and cooperate whatever way possible, sir? Your reactions?
You see, so far as saying that this bill was overdue, if you talk it from the viewpoint of that it was there in the Companies Act 2013, it might be fine. But if somebody looks at the disciplinary mechanism of the institute, I think the institute had been taking disciplinary action against its own members. At least the 15 years tenure that I had in the council, at least there are 3 cases where the member has been debarred for the lifetime. So it's not that the institute had not been acting, and I think somewhere or the other we have not been able to project that the delays were more or less attributable because of the stays which were being given by the courts in the bigger cases, in the real high profile cases. And so far as this NFRA is concerned, I think PNB has proved to be, PNB scam has proved to be the final nail in the coffin, if you really ask me. But I am not getting into its positivity or negativity. I think there are certain things which are bound to happen, and I think we from self-regulation mode we are moving to certain other regulation mode, and probably from that angle you might be able to say that NFRA which has come in is a step which the government has taken to in a particular direction. But at the same time, if you look at the other roles of the NFRA, or accounting standards, NACAS was already doing the same function basically. Auditing standards have been added to NFRA, which to my mind could have been avoided if you ask me. So far as the disciplinary mechanism is concerned, the FM has gone on record very clearly to say that in there will be only certain set of companies, auditors against whom these the NFRA would be applicable.
Right.
This could be either listed companies to my mind, that is the way I look at it, and or the other way is that in respect of the unlisted entities, the threshold limit could be pretty high, because if NFRA starts looking into the number of cases that we get at the institute level, I think NFRA could have been a non-starter. Okay. I think that's the right step, that you really restrict yourself to really high profile cases and then go ahead with it.
Okay, I take that point. I have a few follow-up questions, but I'll come to that in just a bit. Let me just take it to the politicians on the show. Opening comments. First to you, Narendra Taneja, and I want a very simple question. The steps taken today, especially the Fugitive Economic Offenders Bill, will this help nail Nirav Modi? Yes or no? This question was asked to the Finance Minister. Is it with retrospective effect or is it with prospective effect? Please help explain to our viewers. 1, will this help nail Nirav Modi? 2, how will it help nail Nirav Modi? Go ahead.
Well, you see that I think you know the bill is not only for one case, and as far as Nirav Modi case is concerned, agencies are working, and we are quite confident that we'll be able to bring him back as soon as possible. How it's going to happen and all that, that's for specialized agency which are on the job. They only will be able to explain. But look at the picture. What we are basically trying to achieve with regard to the 2 bills we are talking about here is very simple. Since demonetization, even before this, since we came to power, we are trying to bring more transparency, improve the quality of economic governance in the country, and wherever we see that there are kind of holes, we are trying to plug them as fast as possible. You see, and where you look at for our success rate is very high, because in the process we discovered that there was a vast part of the Indian economy was informal, and we started the process of formalizing the informal sectors. And if you look at the progress that we have been able to achieve, I think it's tremendous, not by Indian standards, even by global standards. So as part of these efforts to bring transparency, to bring honesty, formalizing the economy as a whole, and making our economy to the extent possible absolutely world class in terms of governance. I think all these steps are required. In the future, there may be other steps required. But let's not forget one thing, that you have to come out with a solution in response to the kind of things you see on the ground, how people react to these things, and also, broadly speaking, the ethical standards that people practice in our country and in our businesses. So we also have to respond to that. So the objective that we are trying to achieve is very simple: world-class economic governance, transparency, and those who commit crime or those who try to basically, play with the law, they are identified and the cases are pursued, and they are actually they are booked as soon as possible in whichever geography they try to run to.
I get that, Narendra, that will help a lot if you can clarify to our viewers if this bill is with retrospective effect or is it only with prospective effect, because if it is with retrospective effect, then I think it's it's a reasonably bold move. But Sanjay Jha, I'll come to you. Fair, I'll let you react to the points made there by Narendra. But a larger question, the point that Swami made as well. Here is a government that has been faced with a massive fraud, and it quickly wants to be seen as acting. There's nothing wrong in it. I mean, if you look at the Fugitive Economic Offenders Bill, the fact of the matter is that the current legal framework to catch some of these absconders is very weak. Whether it is through the SARFAESI Act, whether it is through the PMLA, the current legal framework is weak, and so they are adding more muscle to the legal framework in ensuring that the fugitives, that there is a reason for the fugitives to come back. Would you deny that this is a move in the right direction?
Sandeep, let me tell you, this is a classic case of, trying to board the stable door after the horses have bolted away. I mean, the reality is very straightforward. I mean, you mentioned the National Financial Reporting Authority. That has been actually part of the Companies Act law enacted 5 years ago by the UPA. I mean, why did the government take so long? And particularly when auditors came into the limelight after the big fraud in Satyam. And if you read many other cases thereafter, you can't have the kind of, even if you look at today the NPA defaulters list, they have had very, very high profile auditor firms that have been signing off on the P&L accounts and the balance sheets. So the fact that the NFRA itself has not been implemented is a manifestation of the fact that this government chose to look the other way. Now, let me tell you one reality of India, that we have always as a country been extremely soft on white collar crime. Now, to give you an example, you mentioned SARFAESI Act, etc., etc. By the way, nothing in the current Fugitive Economic Offenders Bill is such a novel breakthrough that doesn't exist in the laws that you mentioned. I mean, you can seize assets even today. But let me tell you what is going to happen though. Take Nirav Modi's case as a classic example again. All people like Nirav Modi, take even Vijay Mallya, Lalit Modi, these people have foreign assets. And when you actually put this law into effect and try to give it a headline that now we're going to nab them, at the drop of a hat, the truth is all economic offenders in India, and by the way, they are some of the biggest names that you can possibly contemplate, have sizable chunk of their what I would call as dubious assets parked abroad. And now going forward, they will do it with even perhaps a greater degree of brazenness. So I think, and you can't, by the way, no matter what we can do domestically, there is a very little access to seizing assets abroad. I think, Sandeep, the critical point that we need to recognize, you can put as many laws as you like. You can create a plethora of regulations, but you need a political intent. If the system itself becomes corrupted or chooses to be lackadaisical when it comes to, ensuring due diligence, no law is going to help. I'll give you an example. After the Nirbhaya, the horrific murder case, a very strong draconian law came into play. It didn't stop rapes, and in fact, at the end of the day, people have continued to violate the system, and in many cases, the police investigation itself has been faulty. So I think we have got a massive challenge ahead of us.
I take that point.
There needs to be perhaps a greater degree of transparency to ensure that the corporate malfeasance that we turn, we just choose to ignore it. I mean,
Sanjay,
let me tell you this, the way we behave in India as if there's no insider trading, there's nobody cheating.
I take that point, Sanjay.
This could be serious, big corporate companies.
Sanjay, I take a few of points that you made on board. One is it's inexplicable why the government why has it taken 5 years for the constitution of a National Financial Reporting Authority. It is inexplicable, and I have questions on that. And the other point that you made as well, it will do nothing to seize assets of a lot of these companies abroad, is a point well taken. The only difference between this and some of the existing provisions is that this, in some sense, disentitles these fraudsters and these scamsters to bring forward any civil claim. So in a sense, it does sort of make it tougher for them to bring forward any civil claim. So to that extent, it's a good move. But a simple question to you, Swami, before I take it back to Narendra and Sanjay Jha, which is there enough in the bill? I'm sure you've had a look at the draft that was put out by the Department of Economic Affairs as well. Is there enough in the bill to force absconders to return to India? Is there enough in it to nail them? Is there enough of a reason to, to sort of make it compelling for them to come back to India and face the judicial system?
Let us see what, in the first place, I do not know whether this bill is going to have retrospective effect or not. I do not know whether it will already cover the Lalit Modi or Nirav Modi or Vijay Mallya who have already run abroad. And we will have to see whether the Rajya Sabha is willing to support a retrospective clause when it comes down to the legislation. So, for the first, if you can get if you can make it retrospective, I think that adds greatly to the political strength of the move, saying, we are serious to catch the guys. And if the Congress refuses to go along with this, either in the Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, that then becomes a stain on the Congress party. So I would say there's an important thing right now, whether or not it will be retrospective. As I said, beyond that, it will be case by case. There will be some cases where, because there are no attachable assets, the fellow will still run away. And then you will be back to the old game of how do you use the international system to try and persuade a foreign government to repatriate that person. I think at the margin, it may make a small amount of difference to the number of fugitives. I do not think that the fugitives who have gone abroad right now will easily come back, even if you make the law retrospective.
At the margin, it will make a small difference. And Swami doesn't think any of the fugitives are going to come back, even if you were to make the law retrospective. We asked this question to the finance minister in the press conference, and he said that there will be a cutoff date. How is that cutoff date going to be determined? On what basis? I guess we'll have to wait for the notification. But Professor Arun Kumar, a point made by Sanjay Jha as well, which is a lot of these assets, and you understand the way this works, a lot of these assets are abroad. So there's no way any Indian court can order seizure of assets, can seize assets abroad, number one. Number two, even the assets that are here, their value, their economic value is impaired considerably. I mean, look at Vijay Mallya's economic assets that were sort of auctioned many years later. There were no takers for them, whether for his villa, for his Kingfisher brand, which is worthless right now, or the aircraft brand, or for that matter now Nirav Modi's retail assets. I mean, the brand is destroyed. So, what is the point auctioning them or seizing them? What is the value? So, are you skeptical about the fact that the economic value that you can get out of this is going to be limited?
You're right that the economic value of the assets could be degraded. However, many businessmen keep Benami property. Now the question is, can you get to the Benami properties? That could be one threat. However, I'd also like to point out that what most businessmen do is to have large amount of assets abroad, which they take out through the layering process in various tax havens, etc. So, some of the people who run away are living a very decent life abroad because they've got a lot of assets. Now, why would they risk coming back and being in jail or etc. if whatever assets can be seized here, if they're seized, they at least have a lot of assets abroad. So my suspicion is that even if assets get seized here, it's unlikely that people who've got assets abroad in a large sums, they are going to come back. So the effect of the move would be to put the fear of God in the future. But those who've gone away, I think they are not going to really come back. So probably what will happen is that those who are playing with the black economy, generating a lot of black incomes, they're going to now hold assets in different forms. So even if when they go abroad and if there are cases against them, then those assets probably will be outside the purview of the law because they may not be in their name, they may be in all kinds of roundabout ways they'll be held. And what we are finding is that, for instance, when Nirav Modi's case or in the earlier Satyam case, what people do is set up large number of shell companies through which they hide their real intention. So in other words, mechanisms exist by which you may not be able to track who owns what assets in India. and therefore in that sense perhaps, the threat would be there, but it will also lead to a lot of legal complications.
It's an important point you're making there. Let me take it back to the politicians. Narendra Taneja, to you first, and I want you to react to the point made by Sanjay. You can have all the legal, all the laws in the world. You can have a very solid legal framework in place, but to what use if the system is going to fail you, if the system is going to tip off on Nirav Modi and he gets to run away from the country with his family, with his kids, with his uncle, with this family. I mean, so to what use is the legal framework if the system is going to fail you? How are you going to protect that?
Well, actually, I would like to compliment Sanjay Jha because he summed up the culture of the UPA 2 in particular. He summed it up beautifully in the sense that's because it's the culture that were, flourished during that time. Between 2008 and 2014, roughly, if you look at the advances given by banks, much of this money was given due to political consideration was in the region of 50 lakh crore. So when you could easily get a politician, Congress politician, to call a joint secretary or bank chairman and raise, thousands of crores, of course you are tempted to run away or use that money somewhere else. So, or for instance, because that's not a kind of money that that you have to return because you have already bribed some politicians. So how do we change the culture? Change the culture, including the political culture. Since we came to power, you see, instructions given by the Prime Minister was very clear that if you get a chairman of all bank, if you get a call from any politician, call me.
All that. My simple question is, despite all that, so how did Nirav Modi get away? That is a question that people of this country are asking, Narendra Taneja.
No. Okay, allow me to answer this question. You see, the point is that we can't convert the whole country. We can't. You see, you are right. I mean, we have not convert. There is, if there are, yeah, because of the culture, absolutely. You see, that's one. And the second thing is that is still if fraudster is a fraudster. If somebody has basically a criminal and he knows or she knows what he is doing and wants to run away. I mean, you can't really make life difficult at the immigration counter of international airports for everyone, because sometimes they misuse the law and they get away from that. But because of 3 or 4 fraudsters or criminals, we can't really make life difficult or impossible for other people. We have to work to change the culture, bring in the best possible law, toughest possible law, but at the same time ensure that ease of doing business is not compromised. People are actually, we want to expand it further so that it's easy to do business in this country, attract more investment, but at the same time, the culture, change the culture. That's our political intent. You see, what they created, that's why, you can imagine any individual, any of your viewer, if he could just mobilize thousands of crore on a phone call from a Congress politician, why is he going to return that money? Because he already bribed the politician. He will take that money and run away.
I get that point.
So change the culture takes longer period of time.
Okay, these legal changes are to be seen in the context of a cultural shift. That's the view from Narendra Taneja. Sanjay Jha, quick rebuttal from you. I need to go back to Swami. Sanjay Jha.
Yeah, let me tell you, viewers, and I have a lot of respect for the viewers of ET Now. When Mr. Taneja talks of culture, he talks about Vijay Mallya, because the NDA government changed the CBI lookout circular, gave him a VIP send-off. That's culture. Sanjay Bhandari went off despite having serious allegations against him right under Narendra Modi's nose. That is culture. Nirav Modi, that is culture. Mehul Choksi, that is culture. Jatin Mehta, that is culture. Now, I think, Sandeep, to be very frank, I like your channel because, we don't need to indulge in this rhetoric here. The viewers, let's not insult them with our self-righteous balderdash. The truth is that the Bharatiya Janata Party today is facing a very serious accusation that is basically saying that you allowed up to 40,000 crore rupees, if you include the numbers that have been said by the Congress party in today's press conference, of the taxpayers' money to be looted, to be taken out of public sector banks, and now they're abroad. I'll give you one example why I think Mr. Modi's government has got absolutely no moral standing to even comment on corruption and black money. Look at, Sandeep, the example of the Panama Papers. The Panama Papers worldwide was considered to be the biggest expose on tax havens and black money parked in different, different islands and, Singapore and other places abroad. Even Pakistan, of all the countries, we called it a failed state, and perhaps it is so, got Nawaz Sharif, the Prime Minister, to resign on that situation. And what has Mr. Modi's government done? There is a laundry list of very important people in the Panama Papers, and now his term is coming to an end, and Narendra Modi has looked the other way around. So let me tell you, end of day, the truth is, you can keep talking about Kala Dhan and all that. Nobody buys it anymore. Even on Lokpal, they don't want to implement the Lokpal. This government is essentially compromised on corruption, because as I have said all the time, that's how they get money for their election
At least
funding.
10 seconds.
Okay, Narendra Taneja, I'm giving you 10 seconds. I need to go to the other panelists. Narendra Taneja, 10 seconds, quickly.
10 seconds, only 10 seconds. You see, 10 seconds. I'm not surprised that Pakistan has become a role model for the Congress party in terms of governance. Pakistan is a role model. It's very surprised. Your viewers will be very surprised. He talked about, my friend talked about Vijay Mallya.
Cut out the rhetoric, my friend.
Vijay Mallya,
Prashna ka
son of the
jawab
Congress
do.
party. Who gave the loan to Vijay Mallya? He's a son. No, listen. Don't interrupt. Please listen to me.
You elected
Vijay
him to the
Mallya
Rajya Sabha.
is the son of the Congress
You
party.
elected him to
And
the Rajya
Nirav
Sabha, my
Modi,
friend.
Who started in 2011? Who started?
So this is going to go back to, I take that point. Narendra Taneja.
Congress party.
Okay.
They are all the children of the Congress party.
Yeah, okay, fine.
They are all the children of the Congress party.
Okay, point taken,
And
point
the country
taken.
knows it.
Let's,
The country
okay.
knows
Only you are the
Okay,
grandfather.
fair enough.
You
fair
have
enough.
grandfathered the corruption.
Okay, let's
Taneja
take
you
the,
have grandfathered the corruption.
Narendra Taneja, Sanjay, please allow me to interrupt you. Let's keep the politics aside for a moment. I'm coming to Swami, and I'm coming to Swami first, and I will go to Amarjit Chopra, and I have a few pointed questions to him. I'm coming to you, sir. But Swami first. Let's look at the big picture, Swami. You now have, and again, keep the politics aside. Let's look at it dispassionately. What do you have now? You now have clear rules to identify willful defaulters by RBI. You now have an insolvency framework that empowers creditors to take over assets. And now you have a Fugitive Economic Offenders Bill, and you have now a regulatory framework that will sort of crack the whip on errant auditors, right? Would you say that there is some sort of a legal framework in place? You could argue about the political intent, the system failing, but would you say that there is some sort of a legal framework in place that was missing just a few years ago? And you could argue, why is it taking them so long to put this in place? But would you say it's now getting in place? Swami, your views.
But I would look, there is this larger picture. As I said, Modi is there picturing himself as the good guy against the bad guys. So we are now finding again and again the bad guys are coming up, and Modi is not looking very comfortable as the hero, the superhero who is going to knock these guys off. So he's giving himself support by a large number of new regulations, a large number of new laws, a large number of new rules and bodies, including this National Company Law Tribunal, out of which we are attempting to finally get back some money out of the large number of MPAs. I would say this is an incremental process, and we may see more and more of this because it is important. The real problem is, do we have the infrastructure? Even right now, if you see the number of cases being referred to the National Company Law Tribunal, are there enough professionals? Are there enough people to actually go into each issue, resolve them? If there is an appeal against this, are the courts able to take on the additional caseload? Every one of these cases, the big sensational cases, there will be a battery of lawyers trying to delay matters, bringing in all kinds of other issues. Do you have the infrastructure to cope with all this? What we have seen through the ages is that even when there is a day-to-day hearing, there can be a case which goes on and on and on and on. I love to quote the example of Mr. Lalit Narayan Mishra, who was murdered in 1973, if I remember, and it was 38 years before a court reached a decision on a day-to-day hearing basis. So at the end of it all, as I said, there is a judicial regulatory infrastructure in India which does not work. And if that does not work, you may find that all these laws and rules turn out to be paper tigers. That is my real fear.
Comment on that, Professor Kumar. Swami says that there is this judicial regulatory framework that does not work, and so all these laws and rules will just end up as paper tigers. Are you as skeptical as him, or do you believe that we are now putting in place some sort of a legal framework to catch high-value economic offenders? One will argue that, I think citizens of this country are also far more tolerant of white-collar crime, and I think now is when you're seeing this sort of furor over white-collar crime over the last 5-6 years. But do you believe that there is a legal framework in place to catch these high-value economic offenders now with these changes cleared by the cabinet?
So, you're right that there is a legal framework, but the question is, as Swami rightly says, would you be able to implement them given the delays in the courts, given the fact that our investigative agencies don't do a good job deliberately or otherwise? And I'd like to point out that, regarding the black economy, we've had at least 40 committees and commissions that have gone into its different aspects since 1948. For instance, we had the Caldor committee in 1955-56, the Santhanam committee, the Vanchu committee, the Dagli committee, and so on and so forth. They made thousands of suggestions, and we've implemented hundreds of them. We've got large number of rules and regulations that were there to plug the various problems that came up in the income tax, that came up in the excise and various other things. So we've tried to plug. But the point is that, as Swami rightly says, the implementation is the problem. I mean, take for instance the income tax department. The income tax department, gave the full data for 2012-13, where there were 52 million people who filed returns, but they could audit only 5 lakh. And they only had about 1,000 cases, and of that only about 30 got prosecuted over a period of time. So in other words, the chances that when you have these cases, there'll be prosecution. There are 3.5 crore cases stuck in the courts. Judgments that should come in 3 months will take 3 years. Judgment that should come in 6 months will take 6 years. So there's an endless delay in the courts. The prosecution is not properly doing its cases, etc. So in other words, you can have the laws, but their implementation is a problem. So a law on paper may be wonderful, but law as it's implemented may be very, very deficient. So I also am quite skeptical that whether simply changing laws or adding laws is going to solve the problem. So at the heart of it, the problem is political. The political problem needs to be sorted out before we can get all these things implemented properly. So the political will is very essential.
Okay, fair enough. Let's shift focus and talk about the NFRA, and coming to you, Mr. Chopra. And Sanjay Jha earlier spoke about the fact that, it's baffling since why has it taken 5 years for the constitution of this body? Many believe it's taken 5 years because the ICAI has lobbied very hard to stall the formation of this body, and the fact that it had currency across 2 political regimes, the UPA as well, for the limited period that it was after the Companies Act was passed, and of course subsequently largely the NDA. And one of the objections raised is that they believe that the constitution of the NFRA is an interference in the functioning of the profession of chartered accountants as a profession. Why do you believe is the constitution of an NFRA a regulatory body and interference, especially given the track record of this profession over the last 10 years, a series of white collar crime that we've seen, and not enough action being taken? Why do you believe that a self-regulatory mechanism is what works in a country like India?
I think the biggest myth is that institute has not been taking action. You can actually take out the statistics year wise. There could be 1 or 2 years in between, probably for any reasons that the progress in the cases could have been slow. But every year the cases are being resolved, the cases are being sorted out. Even in the case of the Satyam, the moment the court stay was actually vacated, we have gone ahead and held the person guilty, and now the matter is pending with the court. It is not with the institute. Let me be very clear about it. Even when Harshad Mehta scam took place, the delay was not from the institute side. Somebody wanted the institute to go ahead with the cases without even filing the complaint, without even giving the inspection reports of the RBI inspectors. So that couldn't have happened. But let me not get into that particular detail. Most important point is that these 5 years which we talk of, it means even the government somewhere has been convinced, probably to my mind, that there have been government nominees on all the disciplinary committees. It is not that the government nominees are not there. Today also, out of the 40 members in the council, 8 are government nominees. Let me be very clear about it. So it is not that the government intervention is not there even today. I think the government, I will not say it intervention, it is government participation into the affairs of the council, government participation in the affairs of the entire institute from that angle. Now, if the government nominees have been there on the disciplinary committee and we still don't have faith in the disciplinary mechanism of the institute, I leave it to anyone to judge. But the other side is, today also, I am very clear on it. it is probably with a great sense of responsibility that I say that institute has been performing, but today because of PNB, yes, the need has been felt, probably that the case, without even looking at the facts, what was actually triggering this particular scam of Nirav Modi? If you really ask me today, and I can answer that question very well.
Right.
Have we done anything against the management? Have we done anything against the Reserve Bank of India officials who have been really auditing all these accounts for all these years?
Mr. Chopra,
what we have done with regard to the management.
I take your point. I take your point, but I can tell you.
Just 1 minute. Just
sure,
1 minute.
sure.
Give me 1 minute.
Sure, go ahead.
No, but just give me 1 minute.
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Something. I want to tell you something. On 29th of January, PNB proceeds and hands over the case to the CBI. On 5th of February, the PNB proceeds and files an FIR with the CBI in this particular case. On 6th February, they come out with the financial results and don't disclose anything. Then who is responsible, management or not? I think if you don't give something, and in the management representation probably which has been given to the auditors, nothing has been mentioned about this particular case, then I think we need to really share the blame somewhere else also.
Mr. Chopra,
but so far as this NFRA constitution is concerned,
right,
let me say that whatever FM has done, particularly with regard to certain class of companies auditors being taken into consideration, I think let's move on, because
okay, I take that point, but Mr. Chopra, I take that point. I take that point. Mr. Chopra, allow me to interrupt you. Mr. Chopra, allow me to interrupt you. I have a quick follow-up question to you only, and then I need to take a break and go back to the politicians on the panel. I take your point, but and PNB case is a colossal failure. It's a colossal failure of the auditors, of the management, to some extent the regulatory supervisory authority as well. But the fact is that it is a colossal failure of the auditors as well, and the public of this country has lost faith. For how long will we look at the self-regulation? Look at the US. 1 year after the Enron scam, US moved away from having a self-regulatory mechanism and had a proper regulatory mechanism. You spoke about disciplinary action taken by the ICAI. Of the 1972 cases that were taken up by the disciplinary committee of ICAI, penalties of up to 1 year have been imposed in only 14 cases. There is only one test case, which is a Satyam case, where again you've acted only against the auditors, the two individuals, not against the company. So which is why public faith has been eroded, and which is why people of this country believe it's about time that there is a regulatory framework governing auditors.
Please. I think that is where that is the biggest fallacy, because if under the Chartered Accountant Act the institute can proceed only against the member and not against the firm, we can't do. Please be very clear about it. With the Congress government, we moved the Congress government in 2010-11. I was the president. There was a resolution from the council forwarded to the government of India at that particular point of time. Please allow us to proceed against the firms. The government didn't do it, and the government has not done it even till date for that particular matter. So saying that institute did not proceed against the firms is a complete fallacy, because I don't subscribe to that view, because institute did its enough. The resolution was passed, moved to the government for the change in the CA Act, and we had really requested for the change in the CA Act that we should be allowed to take action against the firms. So I think somewhere the people are ignorant of certain facts. So I don't want to take that blame on the institute. But as I said earlier, in the life of the country, everything moves on, and this will also move on. And there is nothing wrong that if this particular thing has come. Yes, to some extent, it will take away certain powers in respect of certain cases from the institute. There is no doubt about it.
Okay.
But there will be a concurrent jurisdiction of the institute in respect of the other cases. Institute still continues to have the disciplinary mechanism. It is not that the disciplinary mechanism has been done away from the institute. In respect of all the smaller cases, the institute will still continue to handle the disciplinary matters.
Okay, fair enough. I need to take a very quick break, gentlemen. Do stay with us. We are taking a short break. We come back and talk more about the political impact of this. How do we see this in the context of the action being taken against Karti Chidambaram? Is it a crackdown on corruption? Is it a crackdown on opposition? And how does this all add up to 2019 is what we're going to be debating with the politicians and Swami on the panel. Back in a moment with the India development debate. Keep it with ET now. back with ET now. This is the India development debate. Important to debate the context of what's happening. You know, we don't have time to debate the Karti Chidambaram case, but I think it's important to look at these developments as well in the context of what's happening politically. Swami, to you first before I take it to the politicians. How do you read the context of this crackdown on corruption politically? You know, on the one hand, you have the government that's taken two steps to tighten the legal framework on corruption and to ensure that, you know, absconders don't get away. On the other hand, it's sort of the entire investigative agencies are cracking down on Karti Chidambaram, you know, and his police custody has been extended till the 6th of March. So in a sense, how do you read this? Do you think this is to be seen in the context of a wider crackdown on corruption by a government that is obviously had to take some stick on account of Nirav Modi running away from the country, or like the Congress party says, the Karti Chidambaram case has to be seen as one of vendetta politics? Crackdown on corruption or crackdown on opposition? How are you reading this, Swami?
I have no doubt at all that it will be a mix of the two. I have no doubt at all that while the government will want to go after the guilty in order to burnish Narendra Modi's image, it will also be keen wherever possible on going after people who have Congress party links in order to besmirch the opposition. I mean, this has always been done by every government. It will surely be done by this government also. So there is always a mix of political vendetta plus actually going after the guilty. And if it has always happened in the past, it will happen now. I am sure that after this Nirav Modi episode, in order to be seen as being tough on crime, I would expect a very significant number of crackdowns on many, many more companies. I would expect many, many more agitations. I would expect many more things which might finger members of the Congress party. They, of course, will scream that it is vendetta, and they might be partly correct. But this is going to be the political scenario between now and the next elections. The corruption issue is going to come up in a big way, and it's you're going to get, you know, on the one hand, you are corrupt, and the other guy saying you are indulging in a vendetta. We are going to see this particular act, I think, again and again and again.
Narendra Taneja, is that how it's going to play out? Is this what is driving all these actions, both the steps taken today by the government and the other steps taken by investigating agency? Is it all being driven as a fallout of the Nirav Modi case, the government wanting to be seen as acting on corruption cases, and it obviously politically suits them to pick up cases where there is a link to the Congress party? Is that what's happening? Narendra Taneja.
No, not at all. Congress is a small party, is reduced to be a regional party now. They're going to lose. You will see results on Saturday, and then you see Karnataka results, and you probably agree with me even more. No, we started it as soon as we took power. You see, we started these initiatives against money laundering, against black economy, and so on and so forth. And demonetization was a kind of brahmastra as far as these efforts were concerned, and appreciated by the people. That's why the kind of the kind of mandate that we got in a state like Uttar Pradesh. You see, this is a kind of, for us, it's a mahayagya. It's a big expedition, big project. We have realized one thing that we all want to do in BJP. We want to make India an economic superpower. And we want India to be a robust, global, world-class economy. We realize we can't do that as if the corruption is allowed to kind of, proliferate and flourish in this country. And we don't really formalize the big informal sectors. We realize that. So we are working in that direction. We are working for the betterment of the country. We have much bigger picture in our mind. Congress is a tiny little thing. It's not really, doesn't bother us. Certainly not Karti Chidambaram. Our focus is on how can we make India an absolutely world-class economy and an economic superpower. That's our objective. You can criticize it, you can take it, I leave it to your choice. But we are working for a much bigger world for the country.
It's a mahayagya, says Narendra Taneja. Sanjay Jha.
Well, let me tell you, I think, I would never insult your viewers. The truth is, let the ET Now viewers know that in the Transparency International Corruption Perception Index, India has gone behind, fallen in the rankings since Narendra Modi became Prime Minister. By the way, the Forbes magazine calls India the most corrupt country in Asia. So let us not even waste time on BJP lecturing the country on corruption. The truth, Sandeep, is very straightforward. At the end of the day, rupees least 40,000 crores have disappeared in the last 12 days, and I think more is going to come out in the public domain. Narendra Modi is now seen as a man whose nara should be "Main khaunga aur main pet bhar ke khane dunga." So this is now, if you looked at today's #1 hashtag trend on Twitter was "Suit boot or loot ki sarkar." So I don't want to get into rhetoric here. The BJP today has managed to conceal a lot of corruption, whether it's Rafale, whether it's Birla Sahara Dairy, whether it's GSPC scam, all of them targeting Narendra Modi himself for only one reason, because they have managed to... Taneja, I did not speak, I did not interrupt you, you do not interrupt me, Mr. Taneja. Let's have a civilized debate. The truth is, everybody knows that, Sandeep. It's been written about all over the place that the government of the day has
Mr. Taneja,
a lot of...
Narendra Taneja, let him complete. Narendra Taneja, let him complete. He did not interrupt when you spoke. I'll come to you. Narendra Taneja, I'll get your reaction, but let him speak. Let him speak. That's not how we debate in this channel. Yeah, Sanjay, quickly make your point. I'll come back to you, Narendra Taneja.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. So, So Sandeep, everybody knows, and I think your viewers need to know, that a lot of corruption from Vyapam down to Lalit Gate, down to PDS scam, you name it, this has not been allowed to grab the national headline because this government is actually trying to muzzle press freedom. We all know how press freedom ranking in India has gone down since Modi has become Prime Minister. So end of the day, they will all come out. Modi and the BJP won't be in power forever. Hopefully in 2019 they will go, and I think you'll see the biggest sleaze and skeletons from the cupboard rolling out. It's a matter of time. But end of day, the political arrogance of Mr. Taneja to dismiss the Congress, good luck, sir. We will see you in Karnataka election. We will see you in 2019. We wait to see where your numbers are and where ours is.
Okay, Narendra Taneja, 10 seconds to you, and then I need to go back to Arun Kumar and Swami. 10 seconds.
Very quickly, why wait for 2019? Let's talk on Saturday. We'll have results from the Northeast. You see, Sandeep, what Congress is trying to do is build new narrative every day. By now, they have built 1 million narratives to target us. They, so building millions and millions of narratives, but these are not going to work. People know the truth, that the Congress is the mother source of all this corruption in this country, and we are fighting against this Ravana, and we will win.
Okay, I take that point, building narratives, spinning narratives. I mean, I thought the Congress is learning from the BJP. You're saying it's the Congress which is the master at it. Well, we'll leave that aside. But Professor Arun Kumar, the larger point that Swami made is from now up until 2019, you'll see a lot of these cases come up. Now, some of them will have a political color to it, some may not, but the government is going to be under pressure to be seen as cracking down on corruption. Is that a fair estimate? Will they really go after, people would argue that the government hasn't moved as swiftly on cracking down on corruption the first 3 years as it has over the last 6 months or so. Will they now be under political pressure to do so? What could be the fallout of all of that? What kind of action do you really anticipate from the government and its investigative agencies?
I want to make a point about Transparency International. It's a relative standing. So decline in the Transparency International ranking could only be also possible because others are doing better and we may not be doing worse. So that's just an aside. But Swami is absolutely right. I think the Modi government faces a crisis of image, especially with the PNB scam, and now every day a new bank scam is coming out. And that crisis needs to be dealt with because the government came on the promise that they'll try and solve the black economy problem, bring back the black money, etc. And they need to look at it politically that the opposition should not gain from it. So I think Swami is right that we'll see many such cases coming up. Now, if you look at Karti Chidambaram's case, which has just come up, there what you see is that the case was going on for such a long time. ED was active, CBI was active, Karti Chidambaram had been investigated so many times. So what was the necessity of arresting him at this point? And arresting him at this point also implies that something will stick to Chidambaram, and therefore to the Congress party. So in a sense, it becomes a political matter. And that's where I think the fight against black money faces a problem. If it's seen by the public to be a political battle where the opposition is being victimized, then I think there'd be a reaction to that. Already in Bihar, I'm told that Lalu Yadav being sent to jail, there's been a reaction in the public and he's drawn greater support. Because what people see is that if there's not a balance between what you're doing against your own people and against others, for instance, on the Vyapam scam and the other scams, if you don't take strong action, but you do take strong action here, then I think there'll be a public reaction. So politically, I think this is a hot potato, and that could be something that could boomerang on this government if it is seen to be very political by the public.
if it is seen to be political by the public. Swami, I'm going to let you have the last word. What's your sense? You know, obviously we are talking 2019 already. How big an issue is corruption going to be in 2019? What's your sense now, from now up until 2019? Is that going to be the big political issue that will determine the outcome of 2019, Swami?
No, I think corruption is going to be the biggest issue. In some sense, it's always an issue, right? It's always been an issue. But why, when Narendra Modi came, this huge wave that swept him into power? What were the two pillars? One pillar was, I am going to give you all jobs. On that particular pillar, he has not done well. He has not delivered enough. There is some controversy now as to whether the Provident Fund data suggests that in fact lots of jobs are being created. But as far as I could see, on balance, when I see all these agitations by the Patels and the Marathas and so on, I would say on employment he has not delivered. Then the second leg was, I am an honest guy who is going to crack down on the corrupt and give you better governance. So when the first leg is failing, the second leg becomes all important. So I would say the corruption issue is going to be all important. Modi is going to go all out to show himself that I am the good guy cracking down on these bad guys. And do you know, some of these bad guys have links with the Congress party. I think that is going to be a strong part of their political strategy. The Congress party is going to face more episodes than this Karti Chidambaram one, that I am willing to guarantee.
Swami is willing to guarantee that the Congress is going to face more episodes than the Karti one. I'm completely timed out. Naren Taneja, Sanjay Jha, Sarun Kumar, Swami, thanks for joining us with that perspective. Well, one can't argue that the two steps taken by the government today, the NFRA and of course the Fugitive Bill, are steps in the right direction as they sort of give some sort of legislative and policy cover for the government to crack down on corruption. Hopefully the government will walk the talk and on this particular issue, because the people of this country are judging. Thanks for watching us on this edition of India Development Debate on ET Now.